morning, everybody, or good afternoon. Welcome to the Laguna Woods Democratic Club September Candidates Forum. Today, we are very fortunate to have with us Cottie Petrie-Norris, who is the current Assembly member for the 74th Assembly District in California. We have Dave Min, who is the candidate for the 37th Senate District, and we have Katie Porter, who is our Congress member for the 45th Congressional District. Each of them will have 20 minutes to speak and to take questions. And some of the questions will be from people who are here on this Zoom call with us, and some will be from people who have sent the questions in earlier. I would like to say that Linda Nearing, who is our club president, is not able to be here today, but she is with us in spirit. So right now, I would like to start with Cottie Petrie-Norris. Thank you so much for being here, Cottie. We've known you since you started to run, and we are so pleased with everything that you have done so far in the Assembly, and we're looking forward to 2 more years of your leadership. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Sue, and thank you to the Laguna Woods Democratic Club. As Sue said, you have been by my side since I first decided to run in 2018, and you were with me every step of the way as we achieved that historic victory. Here we are now. It's mere weeks away from the most important election of our lifetime, and I think I speak for all of us when I say that November 3rd cannot come soon enough. This really is a historic and defining moment for our nation. A devastating pandemic, an economy in free fall, and a profound reckoning on race and bias in America. This moment and this unprecedented crisis, I think, has put into incredibly sharp focus just how important it is for us to have good leaders, to have good government, and to have good governance. And we are seeing the catastrophic consequences when our leaders and our institutions fail us. Sadly, we are seeing the devastating and catastrophic consequences across our country, across our state, and across our county each and every day. The good news is that we are just around the corner from turning that page. Over the course of the last several months, my focus, as I imagine for many of you, my focus has been on COVID-19 response and recovery. California has taken extraordinary steps to fight COVID-19, and a Herculean effort has been underway to flatten the curve of this pandemic and to ensure that California is prepared, that we have sufficient hospital capacity, sufficient medical personnel, sufficient personal protective equipment. The good news is that thanks to the actions of 40 million Californians, we have begun again to flatten the curve to get this disease under control across the state and in our county. We know that our statewide stay-at-home orders and subsequent modifications have saved lives. We also know that it has been an incredibly devastating time for families, for workers, and for small businesses all across our state. More than 8 million Californians have filed for unemployment. We are officially in a pandemic-induced recession, and our state has been grappling with a $54 billion budget deficit. The challenges are profound and the stakes are incredibly high. I am really, really pleased, though, to be able to share that in the face of these incredible challenges, in the face of this unprecedented crisis, we have been able to enact a responsible and balanced budget for the state of California that continues to protect important investments in senior services, in education, in social safety net programs, and in our most vulnerable Californians. I'm also pleased to share that I have been serving as part of the Assembly's working group on economic recovery, and I'm very focused on 3 priorities there. Number 1 is investments in infrastructure, particularly in green and infrastructure and clean energy initiatives. I believe that we can put California back to work. We can get this economy back on track and we can continue to achieve our critical climate objectives and our critical climate goals. Second priority for me as we think about recovery is education and worker retraining. And the third for me is ensuring that we're doing everything that we can to stabilize our small businesses, who are, for so many of us, the heart and soul, not just of California's economy, but of our communities as well. Here in the district, my team and I have been working night and day to meet what is really an unprecedented level of need across our community. We've helped 1,000 constituents submit their unemployment insurance benefits, and put money into the pockets of hardworking moms and dads all across our district. We've also reached out to more than 20,000 seniors doing wellness checks during this moment when so many of our seniors in our community feel particularly vulnerable and particularly isolated. I've also pushed for expedited testing for Orange County first responders. We know if the only way that we can keep our community safe is to ensure that our first responders are kept safe and are able to be at work and serving the needs of our community. And my commitment is that I will continue to work with experts so that we can safely reopen our economy and build our communities back safely and stronger than before. Now, as we look to November, as I said, it is the most important election of our lifetime. As our next president, Joe Biden, has often said, it is a battle for the soul of this nation. In many ways, it is also a battle for the heart and soul of Orange County. Together, we made incredible progress in 2018. Incredible progress. We changed the face of politics in Orange County in a meaningful and real way. Not everyone is excited about that progress. And my opponents, your opponents, they want to take us backwards. The choice between my opponent and I in November could not be more stark. My opponent, like our president, has continued to minimize the seriousness of this pandemic, to minimize the danger, and to put us all at risk. She has criticized Governor Newsom's response as that of a dictator. She's rushed to reopen local businesses without proper safety protocols. And shamefully, she has continued to, in the midst of a pandemic, host in-person fundraisers where masks are optional and social distancing is non-existent. It is this kind of selfishness, this kind of lack of regard for public health and safety that is putting us all at risk, deepening the hurt of this pandemic, increasing the number of lives lost, and also deepening the economic crisis. It's like something straight out of the Trump playbook. As we look to the election in November, I'm pleased to share that we are in a strong position. I achieved 52.3% of the vote in the March primary, and our polling has continued to be strong. That being said, it's much too close for comfort. And as we look to November, we know that there is much uncertainty and there's many unknowns. So I cannot win this without you. As I said, in so many ways, we are in a battle for the heart and soul of this county. My opponent wants to take us backwards, to continue to deny science, to continue to deny climate change, denying women's rights, LGBTQ rights. We will keep fighting for progress. We will continue to fight to protect the California coast and to confront the existential threat of climate change. We will continue to fight for quality health care for all Californians. We'll continue to fight for quality education and real opportunity for all California kids. We'll continue to fight alongside experts to defeat COVID-19, to rebuild our communities safely and stronger than ever before. Campaigning in a pandemic is different. It's difficult. We are still talking to voters talking to them virtually. We are beginning to do daily text banking and phone banking, and we'd love to have your support and get you involved in the campaign. To find out more about me, to find out more about the race, and to get involved in this campaign to help us win in November, please visit my website, which is Cottie, that's COTTIE, votecottie.com. Thank you so, so much. God bless you, and God bless the great state of California.
Cottie, thank you so much for all the good work that you are doing and for all the good work that you plan to do in the future. Now we will take some questions from people who are here with us on the Zoom. So if you would like to raise your hands, if you have a question. And I see that Alan Feldman has a question. Alan, why don't you go ahead with your question? Okay, while we're waiting for Alan, I do have a question from one of our members. There has been talk in our community, which is an HOA community, about AB 3182, which eases some rental restrictions on HOAs. And it would seem from the information we're getting from our HOAs that they are not in favor of this new law. But we know from Jonathan Adler, our legislative action chair, that it has been proposed by Phil Ting, who is a moderate Democrat from San Francisco, and that it has been opposed by people that seem not to be serving the interests of residents. So we would like to know where you stand and what you think the future of this bill is. Thank you.
Well, and thank you for that question. So as you said, this bill would enable residents of HOAs to have additional flexibility in renting out their property, and in many cases providing themselves and their households with much needed supplemental income. And I am pleased to be able to support this bill. I've heard from a number of our constituents, and many of them Laguna Woods residents, who have spoken out in support of this bill and view it as a way to ensure that our homeowners have their full property rights, despite the fact that they are part of an HOA community. So I've been pleased to support this bill, and it has enjoyed broad support throughout the legislative cycle. And so I would expect it to be successful and be signed into law.
Okay, thank you, Cottie. And now we have a question from Alan. Alan, are you ready now?
Yeah, we'll try again.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry
Hi,
about that.
Alan. Good to
Hi.
see you.
Good to see you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all the work that you do for us in the assembly. I want to ask you about back on when you ran for office in 2018. One of your issues was that our current member of the assembly didn't bring any state resources back here to our district, and that was something that you wanted to increase. So my question is, how's that gone? Have you been successful in doing that, and what kind of resources have you brought back to the 74th?
Well, Alan, thank you so much for that question. Delivering for this district has and will continue to be my #1 priority, and I am really pleased to say that I have been able to secure millions of dollars in funding for really critical initiatives here in our district, here in Orange County, including $2.9 million in funding for an initiative to end veteran homelessness in Orange County. And I also secured $4.5 million for the Orange County Fire Authority for an innovative and groundbreaking program to improve our ability in Southern California to respond to and fight wildfires. Heartbreakingly, we have, I think it's 376 and maybe even rising wildfires raging across our state. Our first responders are stretched right now to the breaking point. And the initiative that I worked with Orange County Fire Authority to fund is called Virus. It is technology and a fixed wing, and the deployment of a fixed wing aircraft that enables us to understand very quickly where the fire is and make real-time predictions about where it's going, so that we are better able to utilize our scarce and deploy our scarce firefighting resources. The program pilot was incredibly successful, and we're working right now to ensure that we're able to make that program permanent and roll it out not just across Southern California, but across the state.
Thank you, Cottie. We have a question now from Maureen Mailer. Maureen, would you ask your question, please?
Yes, I'm trying to unmute.
Hi.
Hi there, Cottie. To follow up on the question on AB 3182, I think it is, the concern that many have here, and even within our own club, there are differences of opinion.
Mm-hmm.
One of the main concerns is not becoming a rental community as a whole. Is there anything in the new law that would keep us from putting a cap on what percentage of units could be rented?
That is, that's an excellent point. And I think that it illustrates the fact that we certainly need to be able to be flexible. I will need to double check if there's any prohibition on that cap, and I'll cycle back to you. My understanding is that it wouldn't prohibit some kind of a cap, that it just, the goal is to increase flexibility. But, I will continue to reach out to this group for input on these kinds of issues. Laguna Woods is one of the, if not the largest HOA communities across the state. So the decisions that are getting made that impact HOA communities, we need to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the folks right here in Laguna Woods.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Maureen, and thank you, Cottie. We now have a question from Jean Lepowski, who says that our Orange County elections are quite safe. And what is the state doing to ensure that California counties that are new to universal vote by mail elections run smoothly?
Thank you for that question. Ensuring that we have a safe election and ensuring that we have a fair election is one of the biggest issues on my mind right now as we look to November. And I'm really pleased to report that Governor Newsom and our Secretary of State, Alex Padilla, have already taken steps to ensure that all Californians are able to vote and able to vote safely. We are rolling out, where practical and where safe, in-person voting places. We are increasing the number of drop boxes for vote by mail ballots. And in order to ensure that every vote gets counted, the governor has already signed an executive order which will extend the validity, the acceptance window for mail-in ballots, so that if, God forbid, Trump and the far-right Republican assault on our United States Postal Service should prove successful in delaying the return of ballots, people can be confident that their vote will be counted and their voice will be heard.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Cottie. I think we might have time for one final question, and I think that is wonderful that the governor extended that date. Ballots must be postmarked by November 3rd, but they can be received up to November 20th. So he wasn't taking any chances. We have one other question, and that is, what new legislation would be your priority in your upcoming term when you are reelected?
Well, and thank you for that question. As I said, so much of our focus for very good reason has been on responding to this pandemic. But we cannot lose sight of California's, of our other priorities. So when I have been looking at my legislative priorities for next year, there's a couple of things that I'd like to share. So Number one is continuing the work that I've done to protect the California coast from the threat of sea level rise. Seems like every time I read a new report on sea level rise, the predictions grow, more and more dire, and it's more and more of a crisis. So I will continue to do work there. I'm also very interested in healthcare costs, which, as we know, are spiraling out of control. And a big part of that, there's a couple of big drivers of that. There's a number of drivers, but a couple are the fact that healthcare companies are increasingly being bought up by private equity investors and hedge fund investors. And so we need to, I think, remove some of that profit motive from the healthcare sector. We also need to work to rationalize the value chain in healthcare, so that all of these sort of middlemen that are taking little pieces of the pie and making it more expensive for all of us, that we rationalize some of that and start to really confront the challenge of healthcare costs here in California. So we are going to have a very full legislative agenda. And before I go, I just want to take another chance to say thank you so much for all of your support. And thank you for all you do. And we are fired up and we're ready to win on November 3rd.
Okay, Cottie, thank you so much. And we are also all fired up to do everything we can to turn out the vote in Laguna Woods. And we really appreciate your taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know that the legislative period is just wrapping up now and that you are extremely busy. So thank you for all that you do. Okay, thank you. Bye. Now we will start. Now it is my pleasure to introduce to you Dave Min, who is the candidate for the 37th Senate District. This is a very important election for us in California, because it would be wonderful to have a Democrat elected to this position. We have known Dave for a long time, since he ran for Congress, and we are so pleased to support him in his run. And now please welcome Dave Min, candidate for 37th Senate District.
Thank you so much, Susan. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Laguna Woods, for having me again. I'm sorry that in this time of pandemic we can't assemble personally, but I look forward to seeing you all when we have that chance. So again, my name is Dave Min. I am your Democratic candidate for state Senate here in the 37th Senate District, which is a district that covers quite a lot of territory. We, of course, have Laguna Woods. We have Lake Forest, Irvine, my home city, Tustin, Villa Park, Orange. We stretched out west to Huntington Beach. We have Costa Mesa, Newport Beach, Laguna Beach, and I'm probably missing a few here, but it's a city that it's a district that encompasses over 1 million people and 570,000 registered voters. So we've got our work cut out for us. I'm a law professor at UC Irvine, father of 3 young kids, and wanted to tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm running, and then lay into the race a little bit and give you that view. But first, just wanted to mention my opponent. Like Cottie's opponent, my opponent is extreme. John Moorlach is a lifetime politician. He's one of the most extreme Republicans in the state. He's a staunch Trump supporter who introduced a resolution welcoming Donald Trump to the presidency in 2016 on behalf of all Californians. He's a climate change skeptic who's repeatedly said he does not see evidence that we'll see any significant temperature changes over the next 100 years. And also has denied that human behavior is causing any changes to our climate. He's voted 100% against women's reproductive rights. He's voted against equal pay for women in the workplace, and even against women's safety bills. He's a leading anti-vaxxer and anti-science politician who's compared vaccination requirements to totalitarianism. And during this COVID pandemic, he's been on the front lines of the Liberate movement, heavily criticizing Governor Newsom and calling for the state to reopen early and aggressively. He's also, by the way, a hypocrite. He is someone who is known for, among other things, being the leading critic of public pension obligations in the state. He wants to convert all retirees who have a pension to a defined contribution IRA type plan. But in the meantime, he himself has opted in to collect $80,000 a year from the taxpayers of Orange County, and even voted to raise his own pension. But enough about John Morlock. I wanted to tell you about myself and why I'm running. Those of you who know me know I've spent my career working for the public interest. I graduated from Harvard Law School in 2002, and I was the only person from my class to join the staff of the Securities and Exchange Commission. This was the year that we had Enron and WorldCom. I wanted to go serve my country, protect our markets, make our economy fair, crack down on the wrongdoers who were going to cheat our economy. And unfortunately, we did not do a good enough job of that. But I was the only person from my class of 550 students to do that. I turned down job offers from white shoe law firms and investment banks to start my career at this little known at the time agency. And for me, that began a career in public service. I went on to work in the United States Senate as a senior economic policy advisor. I went to work at a think tank called the Center for American Progress as a policy director. And I was in these roles at the time that we experienced the subprime mortgage crisis and the 2008 financial crisis and the fallout from that. I helped develop some of the leading anti-foreclosure programs, helped to try to crack down on Wall Street. Together with others, we saved over 7 million people from foreclosure. Obviously, that was not enough. But I was excited to come back home to California. This is where I grew up, to take a job at a brand new law school called UC Irvine at the time, teaching the next generation advocates and exploring my research interests. And I guess before I talk about this election, I wanted to talk about why I'm committed to public service. My career has been one that has been for the public good. And I think it really just comes from what my parents instilled in me. My mom and dad are Korean immigrants. They grew up during the Korean War and the aftermath of that. It's a conflict that not a lot of folks are hyper aware of, but it killed something like 1 in 5 civilians in that conflict. After the war, the farmland was devastated. Korea had trouble feeding its own citizens. So it's in that abject poverty that my parents grew up, and they grew up idealizing America and what it stands for. And like so many generations of immigrants before them and then after them, they grew up wanting to come to this country. They worked hard. They came here on a government program, a student visa. They stayed, got their H-1Bs and worked here, and they were naturalized in 1981. Along the way, they had me and my brother. My brother's a doctor. I'm a law professor, and we are in every way the embodiment of the American dream. And I think that is what's at stake right now. So Cottie before talked about the high stakes of this election. We know what's at stake, but we also know that it's not just Donald Trump and COVID that are at issue right now. Those are the key issues we care the most about. But we also have to be thinking about the problems that led to Donald Trump's election. Donald Trump has been running for president for the last 20 some odd years. Why did he win in 2016? And it's because too many people right now feel like the ideals of this country don't work for them. They don't believe that there's economic opportunity and mobility. They don't believe that this country offers a fair shake or chance at social, racial justice. And we have to make people believe again in that. We have a huge job ahead of us. We have these challenges of COVID, of righting the wrongs of the Trump administration, but then forging ahead and trying to lead this country back on the right path. California has to lead the way. As the 5th largest economy in the world, we have a special obligation to try to find a path forward. And it can't simply be about rejecting what Republicans stand for. Yes, Republican policies have failed over the last several decades, but we as Democrats need to articulate some vision for our economy, for society, for our rule of law that will lead us in the right direction. And that is what is so important right now. So absolutely, we need to do a lot on the local level. Right now, I'll just note that Orange County gets 6 cents back on the dollar for every dollar that you pay in taxes. We have to do better. We have effectively zero representation in Sacramento because our representatives, our state senators like John Morlock, our assembly members and others, go up there looking to stick their fingers in the eyes of the other party and not try to work across the aisle and get anything done. I promise you, I will represent you. I will be your voice, and I will always be there to listen to you. But at the same time, we also have to be mindful that there is a huge, huge task ahead of us. We need bold leadership right now. Our institutions are failing us. We in California have to try to help lead the way. For those of you who study history, and I know a lot of folks here have been historians and have studied history, you know that the U.S. Congress has almost always followed the lead of the states. And this time around will be no different. Whether it's a New Deal, whether some of the 19th century acts, whether it's the Interstate Highway Act of the 1950s, or most recently Obamacare, every big picture initiative has been based on some successful state level program. We have a responsibility right now. Let's take that up. We can do a lot right now. These are some heavy challenges we face. There are also some incredible opportunities. And so I am hopeful that when my kids are my age, that we'll all be sitting around someday with my grandkids, hopefully, and we'll be talking about how this period that we're all living through right now was so crazy and anomalous. I'm hopeful that my grandkids will make fun of me and say, hey, Dad, Granddad, how could you be so stupid as your generation as to allow Donald Trump to be president? How could you have been so stupid as to not wear masks during this time? And I hope we can look back on this time and laugh, because it is an anomaly. And I can envision that type of future, but only if our state leads the way. So moving on to our horse race stuff, we are in a great race right now. We are actually favored to win. This race has been rated lean Democrat, but we also know that the problems with the U.S. Postal Service, the challenges of trying to reach voters, particularly students in a time of COVID-19, makes this all so much harder. We need your help. Laguna Woods has been key for me. It was key in winning the primary earlier this year. It's going to be critical in winning the general election later in November. You help turn out the vote. You vote heavily. You're engaged. And I know you have that passion. I've seen it up close. So I'm grateful for your support. Please help us in any way that you're able to do. We are doing postcard writing. We're doing text banking, phone banking, and all sorts of contact-free activities. We're being very cautious about the coronavirus. But you can find out all sorts of ways to help us out by logging on to davemin.com, DAVEMIN. You can also follow me on social media. I'm Dave Min, CA on Twitter, and Dave Min for State Senate on Facebook and Instagram.
Okay, thank you very much, Dave. And people in Laguna Woods can also contact the Democratic Club at lwdemoclub@yahoo.com. And we have information always in the Globe about how you can reach out and help Dave's campaign. We are going to take some questions from people who are right here on the call with us, but I do have a question about from that someone already submitted. Sorry, climate change, and you have spoken about that, and the ongoing threat of fires in California are a big issue. Cottie spoke briefly about one of the new planes that could be used. Do you have any legislation or policy that you would like to work on when you are elected?
Yeah, and what's interesting about the district I'm looking to represent, SD 37, is that we have this beautiful coastline that Cottie represents. But I've also got Assembly District 68, which is currently represented by Stephen Choi, and that area is particularly prone to wildfires. You've got the Canyon area, you've got Tustin Ranch, and in the past, and probably in the near future, that area has been heavily affected by wildfires. So we're getting hit on all ends by the effects of climate change right now. And so absolutely, we have to be reacting and adapting to the climate changes that are coming our way, and they're coming, unfortunately, much more quickly than even the models had projected. We are seeing temperature rises, wildfires, acceleration of fires up in the Arctic and Antarctic that are accelerating the process of climate change. So we need to be responding to wildfires and that threat. We need to be responding to the problems that rising sea levels create. And I'm all in favor of measures like the ones Cottie's talked about. But I think we also need to do everything we can right now to reduce our carbon emissions as quickly as possible, and also to help lead the world in that same effort. Now, California itself is only responsible for about 1.5% to 2% of all carbon emissions in the world. We are doing, I think, an admirable job of trying to get down to zero. But even if we get to zero carbon emissions, say by 2035, we're not going to move the needle on our own. Where we can really try to jumpstart this move towards a green economy is through technology. And so I'm all in favor of thinking about ways to both incentivize a reduction of carbon, but also to incentivize the research and development of the technologies that will make that faster across the world without leading to a huge decline in living standards. We're going to need, light year developments and things like battery technology, energy efficiency, storage, et cetera, if we want to make this happen quickly. We don't have a lot of time right now. So yes, open to ideas. I think we all in this call agree on one thing. We believe in science. We want to defer to those who are scientists and policy experts. But I think what I want to do is emphasize the urgency of acting now. We are in a climate crisis. We have to acknowledge that. We need elected leaders who acknowledge that.
Okay, thank you, Dave. That was certainly a complete answer and long-term. And that's one of the things that we like about you, is that you're always thinking long-term. We have a question from Jean Lepowski. What would you like to see California do regarding healthcare that will set an example for the rest of the nation?
Yeah, so I think, we've seen a lot of monkeying around with our exchanges in recent years. We've, I think, tried to get to, I think at this point, we're pretty close to 100%. I think we're like 90-something% coverage. But that coverage is still incomplete, and it raises the prospect of things like bankruptcy, incomplete care for a lot of people who are undercovered, even if they technically have health insurance. So I'd love to see us think about a public option as maybe a gateway towards thinking about how we might try to move to some of these Medicare for all type models. How do we expand out into a place where people have coverage and have access to what is considered now the gold standard of healthcare plans, Medicare? So using something like the state version of that, maybe offering state Medi-Cal to everybody on a per pay basis so they can buy in at an affordable price, might help to set the market under the Obamacare standards. And then that might also help to help us lead with the federal government in developing a way to sort of use the federal resources to try to make this happen. But obviously we'll have to work a lot with the federal government and Katie Porter and Harley Ruda, because for any kind of significant expansion, as I understand it, we're going to need waivers and subsidies to make that work.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Your experience with working in the federal government certainly will put you in a good position for when you're elected to the Senate. Thank you very much, Dave. We really appreciate your taking the time to be with us today. We wish you good luck with your campaign. And we know and we look forward to welcoming you to the California Senate after November 3rd. And did you have any last?
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's really great to see you all. You're all looking great, and I'm glad you're all healthy. And just stay healthy, stay engaged. Thank you for all that you do.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who joined us today. Thank you to Cottie, and we will be continuing with Katie Porter in just a few minutes. Right, and now it is our extreme pleasure to welcome our super rock star Congresswoman from the 45th Congressional District, Katie Porter. Thank you for being with us today, Katie.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Sue. And I'm so glad to be here speaking to Laguna Woods. My name is Representative Katie Porter. I represent you and other members of the communities of California's 45th Congressional District. And I'm so glad that I could be joining you here today virtually and really excited to be joining with an event with Assemblywoman Cottie Petrie-Norris and hopefully our next state senator, Dave Min. It is so important that we elect strong leaders up and down the ballot who can advocate for working families at every level of government. Cottie has been a really phenomenal partner in the Assembly, and I'm so excited to be getting to work with Dave soon. I'm really proud that I get to represent Orange County in Congress, and one of the things that makes Orange County such a special place to live is that it's a great place for our seniors. When I was first elected in 2018, I promised to be a voice for Orange County families, including older members of our community. I said that I would work with anyone, regardless of party, and stand up to anyone, regardless of party, if it meant doing the right thing for our community. In writing bills and in conducting oversight, I've worked hard to keep that promise. One of the very first bills that I wrote was the Bipartisan Family Savings for Kids and Seniors Act, which I introduced with Republican Jamie Herrera Butler. This legislation would let families keep more of what they earn to go toward dependent care, including elder care. One of the town halls that I've hosted during my first term in Congress has been specifically focused on issues important to older adults. That town hall was in May of last year, and one of the things I heard from members of our community is that they're very concerned about the skyrocketing price of prescription drugs. So in Washington, I worked with my House colleagues to pass H.R. 3, the Lower Drug Costs Now Act, which includes an amendment that I wrote that would prevent big pharma from profiting off unreasonable price hikes. H.R. 3 would allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices and help produce savings to make sure that Medicare can expand its coverage and continue to help provide quality health care to our seniors. Whether it's been working across the aisle on legislation, giving accurate information to our community about COVID and other resources, or holding the powerful accountable through oversight in committee hearings, I've been fighting for seniors throughout my time in Congress. And I'm going to continue to make that a priority, because putting Orange County families first means protecting the well-being of older adults in our community. I know that so many of you have already gotten involved with our campaign and are working virtually to help get me reelected. And for that, I'm so grateful. Thank you. If you're looking to get involved or you have questions for my team, please feel free to visit my website, katieporter.com. I'm so excited to be here with you today and look forward to your questions.
Okay, we have a question from someone who is not on the call, and that question is from Joe Rigo. He says, Louis DeJoy refuses point blank to restore the 650 high-speed sorting machines or the mailboxes because he knows these were enough to suppress mail-in ballots and swing the elections Trump's way. His assurance not to remove any more of the machines is moot. He has already accomplished his goal. What will Congress do to ensure these machines and boxes are restored to their places?
This is a terrific, important question about how we protect our postal service. And Postmaster General DeJoy has allowed collection boxes to be removed and sorting machines to be unplugged and destroyed. And what we've seen as a result is about a 10% reduction in mail delivery on time. And this is an issue that affects our families, it affects our seniors, with delivery of things like prescriptions and letters from loved ones, especially during COVID. It's also a huge issue for our veteran community. The VA fulfills over 80% of its prescriptions by mail, including our senior veterans. So it's really, really important that we don't allow DeJoy to get away with just saying he won't do more harm. He needs to commit to fixing what he has done, to restoring the level of service. And in fact, we need to get him to commit to improve the level of services that the post office is providing. And I think the House has two really important roles here. One is the Postal Service needs additional funding. And there's two reasons for this. One is related to COVID, during which a lot of commercial mail volume, think about commercial mail flyers for things like restaurants, that has been slowed. So they've had less revenue during this time. And the second financial reason is that the Postal Service, unlike any big company or any other government agency, is required by a law passed in 2006 to pre-fund its health and retirement benefits for years and years to come. And without that pre-funding requirement, a burden that no other corporation, not even the largest corporations in America, has to face, the post office would be profitable. So we need to address that pre-funding requirement, and we need to give the post office supplemental funding. And in fact, on Saturday, that's exactly what I voted to do. Voted to fund the post office, provide $25 billion in funding. So that's one thing Congress needs to do, give additional resources. The second thing Congress needs to do is to continue to conduct vigorous, fair oversight of what's going on at the Postal Service. When I questioned Postmaster DeJoy, I learned that he does not know the cost to mail a postcard. He does not know the base rate for priority mail. He did not know how many ballots the Postal Service delivered in 2016. And yet he's offering these empty assurances that the post office is ready and able and capable to handle the election mail in 2020, when he doesn't even know what it did. He couldn't guess to the nearest 10 of million, the nearest 10th of a million. So this is somebody who has made huge changes at the post office without having a good understanding of the agency. We pushed him point blank in the oversight hearing. I asked him if he would resign if the Inspector General finds he engaged in misconduct, and he refused. So there is a really important role for Congress. We're going to have to subpoena more information from him. We're going to have to get him before us again. And we have to hold the U.S. Postal Service Board of Governors, who appointed Mr. DeJoy, also accountable.
Katie, thank you so much for that very complete answer and for the information about the pre-funding, which not everybody might have known. And we know that you will hold their feet to the fire. The next question is from Jean Lepowski.
A lot of people have been concerned, including myself, not only about the election and the vote, but also about the time period between November 3rd and Inauguration Day. It seems to me that it's going to be a very tense time regardless of what the results are of the vote. What do you think is going to happen, and how would we deal with some of the fallout, some of the aftermath of whatever is going on after the election is over and before we finally have a new president?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Jean. And this is something that I think a lot of us worry about. What will the transition be like? Because this is a president who has shown a willingness to disregard clear boundaries of the law. This is a president that has ignored separation of powers and has exercised excessive executive authority. So I think it's understandable while a lot of us are worried. But let me take us back one step. The first thing we have to do is make sure that we elect Joe Biden and our amazing California Senator, Kamala Harris, president and vice president. If we don't do that, sadly, this is a problem we won't have to worry about. And we want to make sure that we elect them and that there is a transition that's going to occur. I'm very heartened by what I've been hearing about the work that Joe Biden has been doing in terms of making plans. He has a strong plan on childcare. He has plans on the economy, plans on the environment, on climate change, and the committees that he's put together to help him lay out his agenda for when he becomes president have a lot of diverse voices in them. So my friends like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Pramila Jayapal, all kinds of different people, Karen Bass, lots of people from across the Democratic Party are part of those planning conversations. With regard to Trump, I hope that he will accept the results of the election. One of the most important things we can do to make that true is let's not make this a close one. And I'm talking to you as somebody who on election day had not won her election. Day after election day, I had not won my election. In fact, it took 8 days until I won my election. So let's make sure that we're turning out voters across this country. Let's make sure that we're volunteering to work as observers to help protect polling places, that we're getting people to fill out their ballots early, that we're teaching them how to track their ballot to make sure it was received and counted. But one of the best things we can do is don't give him any wiggle room. Let's not win this by a hair. Let's win this in a landslide. I think ultimately, if we need to have the Supreme Court take action here, I think we've seen that in past cases on both sides of the aisle, going both directions, the Supreme Court is going to uphold the electoral process. And if you think back to some of the frustrations of the Gore and the hanging chads and all of that election, we have seen the court have to weigh in before in presidential elections. And I'm hopeful that and confident that while I don't agree with the Supreme Court and many of its members, I think they will weigh in if necessary in a way that will make sure there's a peaceful transition of power.
Katie, thank you so much for that good advice about voting and getting the vote out. If anyone is listening and is not a member of the Democratic Club and wants to volunteer, just email lwdemoclub@yahoo.com and we will have plenty of work for you to do. The next question is from Deborah David. She said, we just witnessed another instance of police violence in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Do you have a position on the Breathe Act proposed by the Movement for Black Lives?
What we're seeing with the loss of lives from police brutality is really a perversion of our justice system. Our police have a duty to protect and to serve, and that includes keeping those who are in their custody or at the scene of an investigation safe. I supported the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. I think we do need to ban chokeholds. I think it's really, really important. I think we need to repeal qualified immunity so that we can have independent investigations that deliver justice when there are police officers. So I support these steps, and I think they're really important. And I think the Black Lives Matter movement, both the concrete movement and the larger umbrella of action that they have produced, are helping provoke really important conversations. One of the things I always remind people is we didn't become a racist country. Systemic racism didn't arise in our justice system in the last year or 2 years, 3 years or 4 years. It's not going to go away quickly, but there's no time to wait because literally lives are being lost, and in a way that should give us all pause and distrust of our policing system. So I think that what we should try to build is really help educate people about why making sure that folks are safe, that law enforcement procedures protect people who are in custody, that deadly force, that weapons are not used unless absolutely necessary. These are all actions that keep our community safer and that strengthen the integrity and effectiveness of our police force. So I think it's really important that we don't let anybody suggest there's anything other than a synergy between trying to make sure that every person, including Black people and people of color, are safe with regard to the police and are treated fairly. And we have work to do, and the time is now to do it.
Thank you, Katie. The next question is from Gail Jacobson. Gail? Okay, I think we will jump then to Alan Feldman.
Here, I've unmuted myself. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It took me so long. Hi, Katie. I really admire you. Trump is talking about having law enforcement or people at the polling places to intimidate people. What can be done about that? Or do you think
I'm very alarmed about this. We obviously need to make some plans for our polling places. This year, we have to do this every year, but it's especially important this year with COVID-19 that we have orderly voting, that people are able to maintain social distance, and that regular procedures are followed. But the answer here isn't law enforcement. The answer here is to allow our registrar of voters who administer our elections to do their jobs, and to make sure that we're allowing long-standing, nonpartisan poll watching groups to be present to ensure that everything is running as intended. So law enforcement, this is not a function for law enforcement. This is a function for the nonpartisan groups that engage in poll watching. And we have a good tradition of that. We have voter protection organizations in this country. If you've never been involved in being a poll watcher, it is a very interesting experience. I did it myself in Massachusetts in Elizabeth Warren's first election, and I think it was one of the most rewarding and interesting things I've ever done to get a real understanding of how our democracy works, to see firsthand people being turned away at the polls. And I was poll watching in a deeply Democratic area. And I think that raises another important point. The interference at the polls, while we're hearing the president suggest that it will only cut one way, it is a nonpartisan matter. Every single American who's eligible to vote has a right to do so, regardless of their party. And that's why it's really important to have these nonpartisan poll watchers. So I think one of the things we have to remember is, despite what he says, President Trump does not control state and local law enforcement. They do not report to him. And so I hope that our state and local law enforcement will simply not be responsive, but instead will spend election day doing what they do, responding to first responder calls, helping to keep our communities safe, dealing with investigations and regular policing matters. There's plenty for them to do on a stretched budget because of COVID as is. I just want to remind everybody, in case you don't know, that our registrar of voters in Orange County is widely regarded as one of the very best, most innovative, most successful registrars of voters in the country. And if you go to his website, ocvote.com, one of the things, there's many great things on that site, but one of the things that I found really interesting was his report about the preparations he had made for voting in this pandemic. This is somebody who's planning ahead to make sure that he's prepared to deal with higher registration volumes, higher turnout, and making sure that polling is safe. So one of the things people can do if you're concerned about law enforcement is educate yourself about when to expect your ballot, how to drop it in a drop box if you don't want to rely on the postal service, and you can search those ballot drop boxes right on ocvote.com.
Okay, Katie, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we do not have time for any more questions, although there were several more. Everyone is always so inspired by you. And on behalf of everyone in Laguna Woods, including Club President Linda Nearing, I would like to thank you for being our Congresswoman. I would like to thank you for running again and being willing to run again, and for all that you are doing and will continue to do. Know that Laguna Woods will support you.
Thank you so much. And to everyone in the Laguna Woods community, I just want to take a moment to say thank you so much for the incredible work that you're doing, staying home and staying safe during this time. You've been an exemplary community in putting public health first, and you are saving lives across Orange County. So thank you very, very much. I hear it from my constituents in other communities, how proud they are, how happy they are that Laguna Woods is leading the way in staying safe. So be well, and look forward to seeing you all volunteer, and thank you so much for your support.
And thank you, Katie, and thanks to everybody who joined us today on this meeting, and thanks to all of you who are watching at home. And please remember, vote November 3rd, and vote for Katie Porter, Dave Min, and Cottie Petrie-Norris, and all the other Democrats up and down the ballot. Thank you so much. Bye.